My family chose my cheating ex over me. Here's how it broke me. Imagine this. You're in a relationship with someone you love deeply. You trust them, build a life with them, and your family embraces them with open arms. But then, one day, you discover the ultimate betrayal. They've cheated on you. Your world shatters. But instead of your family standing by your side, they choose to support your cheating ex. They take his side over yours, leaving you feeling completely abandoned and betrayed. This is the story of OP, a woman who thought she had the love and support of her family, only to find out that when it mattered most, they turned their backs on her. They chose her cheating ex over her, and it broke her. By the end of this story, you'll have to ask yourself, could you ever forgive your family for choosing someone who hurt you so deeply? Would you cut ties or try to make peace with the pain? Let's dive into this emotional and heartbreaking tale. An OP had been with her ex-partner, let's call him Ryan, for 5 years. They met through mutual friends, and from the very beginning, there was an instant connection. Ryan was charming, kind, and seemed to genuinely love OP. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and it wasn't long before they moved in together. OP felt like she had found her person. Ryan was everything she had ever wanted in a partner. He was supportive, thoughtful, and always knew how to make her laugh. They shared common goals, building a future together, maybe even starting a family. To OP, it seemed like the perfect relationship. And it wasn't just OP who loved Ryan, her family did too. From the first time they met him, OP's parents and siblings welcomed Ryan with open arms. They treated him like one of their own, inviting him to family gatherings, holidays, and dinners. OP was thrilled. Her family's approval meant everything to her, and knowing that they loved Ryan made their relationship feel even more secure. Her parents would often comment on how lucky she was to have found someone like Ryan. They'd talk about how well he fit in with the family, how respectful and kind he was. For OP, this was a dream come true. She had the love of her life and the support of her family. What could go wrong? OP and Ryan's relationship continued to grow, and they began making plans for the future. Talking about buying a house, traveling, and maybe even getting married. Everything seemed perfect, and OP felt like she was living in a fairy tale. Little did she know, the perfect life she had built was about to come crashing down. It started with little things. Ryan became distant. He'd stay late at work more often, was less affectionate, and seemed preoccupied with his phone. At first, OP didn't think much of it. She assumed he was just stressed with work or dealing with something personal. But as the weeks went on, the distance grew. Ryan started making excuses for why he couldn't spend time with OP. He'd cancel plans last minute, say he was too tired, or claim he needed some space to think. OP tried to be understanding, but deep down she felt like something wasn't right. Her intuition told her that there was more to Ryan's behavior than just work stress. So one night, OP couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ryan had been acting particularly distant that week, and OP decided to trust her gut. While Ryan was in the shower, she checked his phone, a decision that would change everything. What she found was undeniable proof of his infidelity, texts, pictures, and messages with another woman. It wasn't just a fling, it had been going on for months. OP's heart shattered. The man she loved, the person she had built her future around, had been betraying her behind her back. She felt sick to her stomach as she scrolled through the messages, reading the lies he had told both her and the other woman. The life she thought she had was a lie. When Ryan came out of the shower, OP confronted him. Her voice shaking, tears streaming down her face, she asked him how long it had been going on. Ryan, caught off guard, tried to deny it at first. But when OP showed him the messages, he couldn't lie anymore. He admitted to the affair, but his excuses were hollow. He said he had felt trapped and didn't know how to handle his emotions. OP couldn't believe what she was hearing. She felt utterly betrayed by the man she had trusted with her heart. Her world came crashing down, and all she could do was sob as Ryan tried to justify the unjustifiable. Have you ever had that moment when your entire world comes crashing down? When you discover that everything you thought was real was a lie? OP was faced with the ultimate betrayal. Her partner of 5 years had been unfaithful. How would you handle it if the person you loved the most betrayed you like this? After confronting Ryan, OP was devastated. She didn't know what to do next. Her first instinct was to turn to her family, the people who had always been there for her, the people she thought would support her no matter what. OP thought that if anyone could help her navigate this nightmare, it would be them. She called her parents, her voice trembling, and told them what had happened. She expected them to be outraged, to comfort her and tell her that she deserved better. She needed them to tell her that Ryan was in the wrong, that she had every right to leave him and move on. But instead of the support OP was desperately seeking, her family's reaction was cold. Instead of outrage, they expressed disappointment, not in Ryan, but in OP. Her mother told her that she needed to work it out with him, that relationships were hard and required compromise. Her father, who had always admired Ryan, said that maybe she wasn't giving him enough attention, and that's why he had strayed. OP couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect her, were defending Ryan. They were making excuses for his behavior, blaming OP for his infidelity. OP felt like she was in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. How could her family side with the man who had hurt her so deeply? The betrayal didn't stop with her parents. When OP reached out to her siblings, they echoed the same sentiment. Her sister, who had always been her closest confidant, told her that Ryan was a good guy and that she should give him another chance. Her brother, who had become close friends with Ryan over the years, said that she was overreacting and that everyone makes mistakes. OP was floored. Her entire family was defending the man who had shattered her heart. They were making her feel like she was in the wrong, like it was her fault that Ryan had cheated. The pain of the betrayal was unbearable. Not only had she lost her partner, but now it felt like she was losing her family too. What would you do if your family sided with the person who had betrayed you? How would you cope with the pain of feeling abandoned by the people you trusted most? OP was not only dealing with the heartbreak of infidelity, but also the crushing realization that her family wasn't there to support her. In the weeks following the discovery of the affair, OP felt completely alone. Ryan had moved out, but the damage was done. Her family continued to defend him, telling her that she was being too harsh, that she needed to forgive him and move forward. Every time she tried to explain how much pain she was in, they brushed her off, telling her that it wasn't as bad as she was making it seem. OP couldn't understand why her family was so loyal to Ryan. They had loved him, sure, but shouldn't their loyalty lie with her? She was their daughter, their sister. How could they choose him over her? Every conversation with her family became more strained, more painful. OP felt like she was screaming into the void, and no one was listening. To make matters worse, Ryan continued to stay close with OP's family. He would call her parents, go out for drinks with her brother, and even show up at family gatherings. OP's family welcomed him with open arms, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't torn OP's life apart. It was like they had completely erased the betrayal from their minds. OP tried to set boundaries, telling her family that she didn't want Ryan in their lives anymore. But they ignored her requests, insisting that he was still family, and that it wasn't fair to cut him out just because their relationship had ended. OP felt trapped, suffocated by the fact that the man who had hurt her so deeply was still being embraced by the people she loved most. The breaking point came when OP's parents invited Ryan to a family dinner without telling her. OP showed up expecting a quiet evening with her family, only to walk in and see Ryan sitting at the table, laughing and joking as if nothing had ever happened. It was like a punch to the gut. OP felt like she couldn't breathe. She confronted her parents, asking how they could do this to her. Her mother simply shrugged and said, "He's part of the family. We can't just cut him out." OP felt a rage bubbling up inside her. She had never felt so betrayed, so abandoned. Her family had chosen Ryan over her, and she couldn't take it anymore. How would you react if your family not only defended the person who betrayed you, but continued to welcome them into their lives? Could you forgive them, or would it be the breaking point? OP was at her limit, torn between her love for her family and the pain they were causing her. After the dinner incident, OP knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't keep living like this, constantly feeling like she was second to Ryan in her own family. She had to stand up for herself, even if it meant confronting the people she loved most. It was time for her to have a serious conversation with her parents and siblings, to make them understand how much their actions were hurting her, OP sat down with her family and poured her heart out. She told them how devastated she was by Ryan's betrayal, how much it had broken her to lose the person she thought she'd spend her life with. But more than that, she told them how much it hurt that they had sided with him. She asked them with tears in her eyes why they had chosen to support him instead of her. Her voice shook as she asked, "How could you take his side? I'm your daughter. I'm your sister. Don't I deserve your loyalty?" The response was mixed. Her mother remained defensive, saying that they just didn't want to cut someone out of their lives, and that relationships were complicated. Her father, too, echoed the sentiment, saying that they didn't want to get involved in drama and that they still cared for Ryan, even if the relationship had ended. But OP's siblings were quieter. They seemed to understand, in a way her parents didn't, just how much this had hurt her. Her sister apologized, saying that she hadn't realized how deep the pain went. Her brother, too, acknowledged that he had been wrong to brush it off as no big deal, but the damage had already been done. OP knew that words weren't enough anymore. She told her family that if they couldn't respect her boundaries, if they continued to welcome Ryan into their lives, then she would have no choice but to distance herself from them. She couldn't keep living in this limbo, constantly feeling like she was competing with the man who had broken her heart. Her family was stunned. They hadn't expected OP to stand up for herself like this. Her parents tried to convince her to reconsider, but OP stood firm. She had spent too long letting their loyalty to Ryan dictate her emotions, and it was time for her to prioritize herself. Have you ever had to set boundaries with your family even when it was painful? OP was faced with an impossible choice: continue being hurt by the people she loved or stand up for herself and risk losing them. What would you do in her shoes? After the confrontation, OP made the difficult decision to distance herself from her family. It was one of the hardest things she had ever done, but she knew it was necessary for her own healing. The pain of being abandoned by the people she trusted most was unbearable, but staying in that toxic dynamic was even worse. OP started to rebuild her life piece by piece. She leaned on close friends who had been supportive throughout the ordeal, finding comfort in the people who truly had her back. She focused on herself, on healing, on rediscovering her passions, on figuring out who she was without Ryan and without the validation of her family. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain felt too heavy to bear, when OP questioned whether she had made the right decision. She missed her family deeply, but every time she thought about reaching out, she remembered how they had chosen Ryan over her. The betrayal cut too deep, and she knew that healing would take time. OP sought therapy to help process her emotions. She needed to understand why her family had reacted the way they did, and more importantly, why it hurt her so much. With time, she began to understand that their actions weren't a reflection of her worth, but of their own inability to handle conflict and loyalty. It didn't make the pain go away, but it helped her find a path forward. As the months went by, OP found a sense of peace. She had built a new life for herself, one where she wasn't constantly weighed down by the betrayal of her ex and her family. She started to rediscover who she was: strong, independent, and resilient. She realized that she didn't need the approval of others to validate her self-worth. She was enough. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after losing the people you trusted most? How did you find the strength to move forward? And what advice would you give to someone going through something similar? OP's journey was long and painful, but in the end, she found her way back to herself. So what do you think? Was OP right to distance herself from her family, or should she have tried harder to make peace with them? Sometimes the hardest decision is the one that's best for your emotional well-being. I'd love to hear what you think. Could you ever forgive your family for choosing someone who hurt you so deeply? Or would you walk away for good? Let me know in the comments below. OP's family choosing her cheating ex over her is beyond messed up. I can't believe OP's family would side with the person who betrayed her. Ryan didn't just cheat on OP. He broke her trust and destroyed their future together. How could her own family not see that? It's heartbreaking that OP had to deal with this betrayal, not only from her ex, but also from the people she thought would support her no matter what. Exactly. It's like a double betrayal. First, Ryan cheats, and then her family, her own family, basically invalidates her feelings by siding with him. That kind of pain cuts so deep. I don't know how OP managed to stay strong through all of this. The worst part is that they're making excuses for Ryan. Saying things like relationships are hard doesn't give someone a free pass to cheat. They should have had OP's back. It's so unfair that she was left feeling abandoned when she needed them the most. OP is incredibly strong for standing up to her family. OP did the right thing by confronting her family, even though it must have been so hard. It's never easy to stand up to the people you love, but when they're hurting you by keeping someone like Ryan in their lives, she had to set boundaries. It takes so much strength to choose yourself when everyone around you is trying to gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting. I couldn't agree more. Setting those boundaries probably felt like the only way to take back control of her life. Her family needed to hear how much they were hurting her, and even though it didn't fix everything, OP put herself first, and that's huge. It's so important to stand up for yourself, especially when you're being made to feel like your pain isn't valid. OP showed incredible courage by making it clear that she wouldn't tolerate their behavior. It's sad that it had to come to this, but she did the right thing. How could her family invite Ryan to dinner after what he did? I'm speechless that OP's parents invited Ryan to a family dinner after knowing he cheated on her. That's beyond disrespectful. It's one thing to try to stay neutral in a breakup, but welcoming the person who broke your daughter's heart like nothing happened? That's a whole new level of messed up. I know, right? It's like they completely ignored OP's feelings and went straight to making Ryan comfortable. How could they not see how devastating it must have been for OP to walk into that dinner and see him there? That would have been the last straw for me. I can't even imagine how OP felt in that moment. Her family was supposed to be her safe space, but instead they turned it into a nightmare by inviting the very person who betrayed her. I honestly don't know how she kept it together. I would have walked right out. It's like OP was invisible to them. OP's family siding with Ryan makes it seem like they didn't care about her feelings at all. It's as if her pain didn't even register with them. It's one thing to be hurt by a partner, but when your own family dismisses your emotions and acts like nothing happened, that's unbearable. OP must have felt so invisible to the people who were supposed to love her the most. I totally agree. OP's family should have been her first line of support, and instead, they made her feel small and insignificant. It's awful when the people who are supposed to have your back don't even acknowledge your pain. That feeling of being invisible can stay with you for a long time. Absolutely. OP's family not validating her feelings just piled on to the betrayal. It's hard enough to process a breakup, but when your family chooses the other person's side, it's like you're standing alone in your grief. They really failed her when she needed them the most. OP did the right thing by cutting them off. OP had every right to distance herself from her family. If they couldn't respect her boundaries or understand her pain, she needed to protect herself. No one deserves to feel like they're less important than the person who hurt them. It must have been an incredibly painful decision, but it was the best one for her mental health. Totally. Sometimes you have to put yourself first, even if that means distancing yourself from people who are supposed to love you. It's sad that her family couldn't be there for her, but OP needed to focus on healing. Staying in that toxic dynamic would have just kept reopening the wound. Cutting ties is hard, especially when it's your family, but OP showed a lot of strength by choosing herself. She needed to heal, and staying in that environment wouldn't have allowed her to do that. It's heartbreaking, but sometimes self-care means making the toughest decisions. I can't believe OP's family tried to guilt her for drama. The fact that her family didn't want to get involved because it was drama just blows my mind. This wasn't petty gossip. This was OP's heart being shattered, and they treated it like a minor inconvenience. Her feelings were valid, and they should have had her back instead of dismissing her pain as drama. Ridiculous, right? Calling it drama is such a cop-out. It's like they didn't want to deal with the uncomfortable truth, so they downplayed everything. OP deserved more than that. She deserved to have her feelings taken seriously, and her family completely dropped the ball. It's infuriating when people try to minimize real pain by calling it drama. OP wasn't causing drama, she was betrayed, and her family couldn't even give her the emotional support she needed. They really showed where their priorities were, and unfortunately, it wasn't with OP. OP's strength to rebuild herself is inspiring. Despite everything, OP showed so much strength by focusing on her healing and moving forward without her family's support. It takes an incredible amount of resilience to rebuild after a betrayal like this, but she did it. She put herself first and didn't let Ryan or her family define her worth. That's truly inspiring. Yes, OP's journey is a reminder that, no matter how much others hurt us, we can always choose to rise above it. She didn't let the betrayal break her. She chose to rebuild and focus on her own happiness. That's real strength. OP's resilience is a powerful example of self-love. It's hard to walk away from the people you love, but sometimes it's the only way to heal. Her story shows that even after deep betrayal, there's always hope for a fresh start. And if you found this story as heartbreaking and powerful as I did, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.